Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? Starting a little bit early today because today is Free Comic Book Day. And that means I got to be finished by a certain time so I can go get me my free comic books. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. Um, Abortion. That is going to be the main subject of today's stream because the Republicans have done what they said they were going to do for the last 50 years. That being, finally, they caught the car and are going to overturn Roe versus Wade. So, yeah, not a good time to be a woman in the United States. Not a good time to be someone who actually cares about human rights, right? Or actually gives a shit about, the Constitution. So before we jump headlong into that, let's see what we're working on. Last time we worked a little bit on this middle seam, and I look right here, right in the middle, it's still a little janky. So we're going to work a little bit on that just to kind of get rid of that, the appearance of that break in the page there. So that's what we'll be doing today. Anyway, folks, so the thing about abortion and Roe versus Wade in particular is that it's one of those things that if it doesn't really affect you, it's easy to ignore, right? Uh, for example, I myself personally didn't really know much about the history of, even that court case, Roe versus Wade, until I researched for this, live stream, right? And when you kind of think, but abortion though, abortion is actually something that does affect everybody, you know. And if it doesn't affect you directly, then chances are you know a woman who has been affected by it, you know a woman who has had one. Maybe people within your own family may have been affected by this. Maybe people within your family have had abortions that you don't even know about. That's the other thing too, right? Because thanks to Roe versus Wade, they don't have to tell you. That's what the right to privacy is all about. But essentially, Roe versus Wade was about in Texas, right? It was outlawed in Texas, and a woman was pregnant with her third child, and she wanted an abortion. And we'll get into that a little bit later, right? The thing about this, right? The thing about abortion in general is that the opposition to abortion is usually framed in such a way as to like claim that they are saving lives. The conservatives and the Republicans and the all those Christian you know evangelical Christians and whatnot are always talking about how they want to save the babies. They want to save the little fetuses or whatever, and it's murder, blah 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 blah. Right? In real life, Republicans, conservatives, they don't give a shit about children. Right. That's one thing that really we all need to remember when we go into this debate. Whenever you're talking to anybody who opposes abortion, they don't actually care about children. You know, you might find an individual person who claimed, for one reason or another, who might actually care about children. You might find an individual person who like does support programs and, that actually help children and adopt and, does all puts their money where their mouth is, you know. But the actual sort of taken in the aggregate, not really. And the Republican Party in particular, the GOP, they don't give a fuck about children at all. Zero. Right. They routinely do things like cut benefits to children, things like SNAP, you know, um, welfare benefits. They don't support things like sex ed, right? Because there's certain programs. that, the government is directly, involved with and, funding and whatnot that have been, demonstrated to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies, right? And you would think that if you don't want the little baby fetuses to be dragged out, and murdered, quote unquote, then you would support programs that reduce the amount of unwanted pregnancies, right? Wouldn't you think so? No unwanted pregnancy, no abortion. Doesn't that make sense? But they don't actually support those things. They don't support things like prenatal care, you know, sufficient prenatal care that actually like will help the child be born in a healthy way. They don't care about that at all. In fact, just access to just normal health care in general, Republicans just routinely try to, sabotage that every single time. If you remember the ACA, the fight over the ACA, they just all of them, every single one of them voted against it, right? And then they spent, the last half of Obama's presidency trying to overturn that, trying to prevent people from getting health care. That's what all those votes were, when in the House, when the Republicans voted against, to try to overturn the ACA 63 odd times, something like that. 60 times, more than 60 times. It was like 63. That's them trying to take away people's health care. Everybody should remember that. Everybody out there who votes, and you should fucking vote, right? Everyone out there who votes should remember this is what they're all about, right? They do things like they ban sex ed. They do not want, watch what's coming next. Sex ed is already a thing that's on the chopping block in a lot of red states, right? Well, when you educate children about how their bodies work, they're less likely to get, pregnant. They're more likely to take precautions, when you educate them like, hey, if you do this, and you don't use protection, then 9 months later you're going to have a little present. Then, and here's the thing about it, right? It's educating the woman. It's educating the girl, in this case, right? Teenage girl. And when girls are educated about, sexual sex ed and how to prevent a pregnancy, they tend to have fewer unwanted pregnancies, right? Because they make smarter decisions because they won't just like, you know, they know what the consequences are, right? And this is so then they'll insist on using protection, because they know the consequences. They don't care about that, right? Republicans don't care about that. Republicans want to like remove that from schools or whatever, right? They want to keep kids ignorant of, all of this stuff. And it's like, it seems a little counterintuitive. Another one is higher wages, right? The higher your wages, just in general, right? The more money people make, the less unwanted pregnancies they have, right? Mainly because the more money you make, the less children you have. And when you do have children, it comes from a more stable like family situation, financially at least, right? And a lot of the abortions out there happen when people already have children and they can't afford another one, right? That's like a major, it's not all just like, 16-year-old girls or whatever who got like, knocked up on prom night. That's not, no, no. The majority of abortions are adult women between the ages of 24 to 28 who already have children who are usually, married. Right, because you usually don't have children unless you're already married, right? But, most of the time, this is what it is. This is the majority of abortions. And they can't afford another child for whatever reason. They don't make enough money, something like that. And that's usually the number one reason is if we have another kid right now, it's going to screw everything up and we're not going to be able to afford it. We could barely afford the three other kids that we already have. And so they get an abortion, right? Well, you make more money, less abortions. Republicans don't give a shit about that. Republicans actively are trying to make, Republicans want to reduce wages, right? They want you to make less money. That's, you know, I'm serious. Find me one Republican in Congress right now who wants to raise the minimum wage. You know how many there are? Zero. Zero Republicans want to raise the minimum wage, right? Zero Republicans want to cut taxes for people who aren't super rich. Take a closer look at Trump's giant tax cut that we got in 2017, right? Do you own a house? Do you itemize? Then guess what? Your taxes went up because they took that shit away. You used to be able to itemize. You used to be able to do something like, you used to be able to do things like take away, a certain amount of like get a tax break for having a home office. That's gone, right? Like you used to be able, like if you had to like buy gas or something for your commute or whatever, gone. They took all that away. Yeah, they raised the standard deduction a little bit, but how many of you out there had to pay taxes this year when you didn't last year? I had to fucking pay taxes. I make less money this year than I did last year, and I had to pay taxes, right? Because they raised them. They raised them on the middle class, and because they don't give a fuck about you, they don't care about you unless you're super rich, right? The same way that they don't care about children. They don't give a fuck about children. Education, that's another thing. Republicans want to take away education. They want to take away, there was Abbott from Texas I was going to save this for later, but I might as well say it now. Governor Abbott from Texas was on a radio show not that long ago where he basically said that he hinted that he wants to overturn, let me see, what was it? It was this right here. Let me just go ahead and open that up. And let's bring this over here. Abbott says Texas could resurrect Supreme Court case requiring states to educate all kids. Right. Let me just, yes, okay, thank you, fuck off. Let's just put this down in the chat for you guys so that you can see this. So now that that they're going to overturn Roe versus Wade, now there's all these other court cases that they're looking at too. This one in particular is a court case that says that the state, let me go ahead and close this. Well, you can read that later. There's the URL for you. But basically, it's a case that says that the state has to provide free education for all children, right? He wants to overturn that, you know. He wants to get rid of that, mainly because it requires Texas to educate every child, including the children of, you know, undocumented immigrants. That's the reason why. So basically, it's he wants to get rid of that because of, bigotry against, you know, Latinos, right? And there, this kind of goes to show you, it's like, is that someone who cares about children? Is that a policy of somebody who says that they want to protect your child and help your child? No, they don't give a shit about your child. And the conservative stance on abortion doesn't make sense if you look at it through that lens. If you look at it through the lens of actually protecting children, it doesn't make sense because it's inconsistent with everything other thing that they like support policy wise, right? It really only makes sense when you realize that it's a method of control, and that's what it is. When you realize that the opposition to abortion is all about controlling women and controlling like the basic building block of a society is the family, right? And the reproductive rights. That's a very, very basic right. If you don't have a right to determine when and where and how and with who you want to have children, then you don't have rights. Okay, if the state is allowed to come in and say you are required to do this with your body when it comes to your child, whether that's forcing you to have the child or not forcing you to have it, whatever, You know, it would go the other way too. If we had a state law, kind of like China's, you know, one child policy. If we had a law like that, that would be just as oppressive. If there was a law saying you had to have a child no matter what, or if there's a law that says you are not allowed to have more than X number of children, that's still the same. That's just oppressive. That's in the other way around. Because when you don't have that reproductive freedom to determine, you know, this is, what your family is going to be like on your own, then basically every other right you have just falls away after that. What's to stop the state from saying, okay, now this is who you're allowed to have a child with? You know, it used to be illegal in this country for, people of different races to get married and especially have children, right? Not that long ago, 1969, I think, is when, the interracial marriage was legalized in the last state in this country, right? There is no, by the way, federal law protecting interracial marriage. There is none. You could try to say that somebody could argue maybe that the Civil Rights Act would apply to that, but it's basically been just, it's been the domain of court cases, right? If I'm wrong about that, please let me know. I would like to know if there actually is a federal law that says, that protects interracial marriage, that specifically lays it out. Is there a federal law that says no state shall infringe upon the ability for people to get married to term, using race as a factor for that? Please let me know. But as far as I could find, you know, as far as I can find that hinged on a court case, right? The Republicans have just shown that they don't give a shit about precedent and they don't care. And basically, if this law can get overturned, this law that's, this right, this court case that has been established law for 50 years and that multiple other court cases have used as precedent. If they can remove that, then they'll remove anything. It basically means they don't give a shit about continuity of government, right? Consistency of government. That's what a precedence is when, one court basically uses the ruling from another court as a basis for their ruling. That's the whole idea. It's the whole idea is that, precedence basically is supposed to mean that the court is supposed to be consistent in its views, right? The court is supposed to be consistent in its views because if it's fair for one person, then it's fair for everybody. That's the idea, right? If you're going to have a court case that says this ruling that applies to this person is correct, then the next time a similar kind of case comes up, the same sort of, basis in law, legal basis, right, should also apply. And by ignoring this precedent, the Republicans have basically said that doesn't matter anymore. The law is now what we say the law is, right? It's very authoritarian, you know, for everybody out, and this is like something that, for 50 years, everybody, people were basically in denial that, oh, they're never going to do this, right? And you know what the thing is, if you were to come to me in like 1995, right, I would have said the same thing. I would have said, they won't touch abortion with a 10-foot pole, right? And it was because they seem to be making a ton and ton, a shitload of money off of raising money to defeat abortion. But did they ever do anything about it? Not really. Not they didn't do anything about it for like 30 years. They didn't pass any laws. It's really only within the last, geez, 5, 6, 7 years since the right wing has become like incredibly polarized and has moved way, way far to the right that they finally have like, and basically you know what it is? It kind of, I think it kind of started right after Obama got elected. They just went super right wing after the Tea Party people took over all that shit, right? And it's sort of like the crazies are running the asylum now, And this is sort of one of the things like that I've seen just as a side note, like part of the commentary that you're getting from the right wing now. They're all trying to blame like they're trying to make it all about the leak of this draft and not what the draft actually says, right? And I've seen more than one person um, say like make a comment saying that this is because abortion is extremely popular, and there is some truth to that, you know, because roughly 70% of the country wants there to be an abortion in this country, and 70% of people in the entire country. And that's like basically every state as well, not just like blue states, but in red states also, abortion is very popular, you know, like access to like basically like 2/3 of every state, like everybody in every state like wants to support abortion. So I think, the political establishment, the Republican establishment is kind of shitting in their pants over this because they realize that it's going to be used in the midterms that are coming up, and they're probably, you know, not going to do as well now because now they've just galvanized the left. See, here's the thing, right? Getting off this is a little bit of a side tangent, but fuck it, it's relevant. The usually in the first um, election, right? The first midterm election after a presidential election, the party in power usually loses. And that's just kind of how it usually shakes out. And it's because the people who won the election get complacent. The people who lost the election get motivated and they go out and they like, organize more and shit. And they usually pick up enough seats to take either one or both houses of Congress, right? That happens all the time. And it happened to Obama, it happened to Bill Clinton, it happened to George W. Bush, right? The other reason why they were really poised to clean up, though, in this election is because this is after the census in 2020, right? The lots of redistricting has been, district lines have been drawn, stuff like that. And basically, the Republicans are cheating. That's what's really going on. We'll have a video once we get closer to the election. We'll have a video about this. The Republicans have essentially cheated and using the census, basically stacked it, and now are using that census data that they, essentially fucking like cheated with when they were collecting it. They're going to use that to redraw districts that favor them. You know, districts like where you just put all of the Democrats into one district, and then like all the Republicans in every other district. And so basically, people don't have a choice. All the Democrats are stuck in one district. They can only elect one guy, right? Whereas the Republicans can elect 9 other people. You know, that's what's basically going on. And so they were looking to they were going to take the House anyway, and they already knew they were going to take the House now. And now it's just sort of like this might throw a monkey wrench into that, because now they might not take the House and the Senate. Right? They might actually lose a few seats in the Senate. So it's sort of like now they're pissed, And I'm glad in that regard because the left in this country tends to just go to sleep when they're not in charge of the presidency. The left in this country just sort of gives up. We've seen that happen over and over and over, Left was very galvanized during the Bush years. Obama becomes president. The left wing in this country just totally goes away. Especially the anti-war left. They just completely just hibernated all throughout the Obama years, you know. And the same thing happened now, Trump becomes president, the left gets very active. You get things like, Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff, right? A Democrat becomes president and gone. Gone. All those protests, all that shit, completely gone, right? The left is really only organized when they're not in power. And that's the difference between Republicans and Democrats, the left and the right in this country, is that the right wing in this country is always organized. They're always on top of it. Every election, you know, they're out there every single election. They're out there even when even when they are in charge. And then when they do take power, they do the shit they say they're going to do. Right, which is bad for the country because their policies are horrible, and I think that the next Republican president is probably going to destroy America, but that's a subject for a different stream. Anyway, where was I? Completely went off on a huge ass tangent there. Sorry about that. I do want to talk a little bit about a brief history of Roe versus Wade, right? Because like I said earlier in the stream, myself personally, I didn't really know the history of this at all. They don't really teach you about it, you know, and why it was so significant. Not really, right? And I never really bothered to learn, so I thought that would be a cool thing to go over. So I went up, hit up the Wikipedia page for Roe versus Wade here. So, the case was brought by a woman named Norma McCorvey, who lived in Texas, right? Um, During the time though, she was in the actual court case, she used a pseudonym because she didn't want people finding out who she was because, it was very this is a very touchy subject and they were afraid of like, her getting death threats and shit like that, right? Which I think if I believe right, she eventually did, right? Once they found out who she was. Um she was yeah, harassed and shit like that. Anyway, let me zoom in a little bit here. Make that a little bit bigger. Okay. So what it was is that she became pregnant in 1969 with her third child, right? And wanted to get an abortion because she couldn't afford another child. And that's, like I said earlier, that's where the majority of abortions in this country come from. You know, Women who already have families or who already have children, usually who are married as well, and can't afford or don't want another one for either financial or health reasons. Right. Anyway, so abortion was illegal in Texas at this time, except in cases where the mother's life was threatened. Right. So she filed a court case basically to overturn that law by saying that it was unconstitutional to not allow a woman to, choose to get an abortion. Right. There was a panel of three judges that ruled in her favor. And the state, of course, appealed to the Supreme Court. Right. So here's the thing about this, right? Because you'll see that this wasn't just a normal ruling, like, it was pretty significant. So the court ruled in her favor 7-2, okay, which is like a pretty big margin. Right. 7-2. So it wasn't like this was a slim margin with like lots of dissent and hooing and hawing and all that shit. It was kind of an overwhelming victory there. 7-2, right? And basically, the ruling says that the 14th Amendment provides a right to privacy that protects the right to abortion. And it was basically the right to privacy part comes from a provision in that law that said that if you get an abortion, you need your husband's permission, and that's where the right to privacy comes from. Because they basically ruled that no, you don't need your husband's permission to do it because you have a right to do things. So you have a right to your own privacy, you know, and that's where that right to privacy part comes from. That you have a right to do what you want to do with your body, and you don't have to tell anybody, right? Me personally, I believe this right should extend to children, but a lot of people don't. For example, in California, um, it used to be, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be the law that if you were a minor, you could get an abortion without your parents' permission, right? And you would think like, well, no, minors should at least have to have their parents' permission, blah blah blah. They're minors; they don't have rights, right? Because minors don't have rights in this country, right? But there are situations where it protects the woman, it protects the girl, right? Because especially when you're a minor, you may be the victim of an abusive family. And if you think about it, the only reason why a minor would not tell their parents about something like this is because they're afraid of what might happen, you know? And that's basically that's one example of how your right to privacy is not just a right to, it's not just a right to do what you want and not have to tell anybody. It's something that could genuinely protect you from harm, from like actual physical harm. That's just one example of what the right to privacy is, you know. Um, and imagine if they take that away. Imagine if you don't have a right to privacy. Imagine that. Imagine that if you don't have a right to privacy, then the state or your job, something like that, can demand things of you. You know, for example, here's another way your right to privacy protects you. You know, it is illegal for a job to ask you what your religion is, and then like on your job application, that's illegal, right? Your job application is not allowed to say, when you apply for a job, what's your religion? And because they could conceivably use that as a litmus test, saying, okay, well, we don't hire, Pentecostals here, you know, we don't hire Muslims here, we don't hire, Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses here, something like that, right? And even though here's the thing is that you wouldn't be able to prove that's why you didn't get hired. But if it's on that job application, then it could be. And you would never be able to prove that. You would never be able to take them to court and say, I didn't get hired because of my religion. Right. Just the fact that it's on there is a violation of your privacy. Another example of how your privacy, this is what, the right to privacy means. And here's the thing is that the conservatives will tell you it doesn't actually say in the Constitution and under the 14th Amendment that you have an actual right to privacy, and it doesn't, right? But this is, these are what court cases are for. It's like it was to interpret the law, you know. Should it basically imply that? Does the law imply that you have a right to privacy? Does the law imply that you have a right to certain to not reveal certain aspects about your life and character which can be used in such a way as to discriminate against you? Yes. And that's exactly what Roe versus Wade says, right? Basically said that it used what's called strict scrutiny. Excuse me. So this ruling, basically Roe versus Wade, basically said that you're right to, that it in order to regulate abortions because of, your right to privacy, which extends from the 14th Amendment, that they would have to use what's called strict scrutiny, which is basically the highest standard of judicial review. This is actually in the ruling. It actually says this, right? And what that means is that it's basically strict scrutiny is when the court finds that a law infringes upon a constitutional right, then you have to apply this strict scrutiny standard, right? Basically, you have to prove that the regulation of this right, that, whatever regulation or law that you're trying to pass, that the government has a compelling state interest, you know, and that the government, and then in order to overturn that law, the government has to prove that the law is tailored, strictly tailored in order to infringe upon the right that the strict scrutiny is for. Long story short, compelling state interest means something like a disaster, like a compelling state interest means something like there's, you know, like what would be an example of that? an example would be if like let's say, God, a good example of compelling state interest. Let's say some kind of fantastic scenario where the human race is about to go extinct or something, right? And there's less than, say, 50,000 people left, and somebody wanted to get an abortion, then they could be like, no, you're not allowed to have an abortion because we're on the edge of it. You know what I mean? That would be compelling state interest. So, okay, okay, here's a good example. Here's a good example. Compelling state interest, right? The let's see, it was the internment camps in 1945 where they put Japanese citizens. That's compelling state interest, right? The argument was at the time that they were not only afraid of sort of like a third column, like, or what do they call it, fifth column, like infiltrator type people. Not only were they afraid of like spies and saboteurs and that kind of thing, but they were also putting people in these camps to protect them from like mob violence. That was the and you could argue, I mean, obviously I think that's bullshit, right? But you could argue that was a compelling state interest. So there you go, right? Something like that, some kind of emergency, like martial law. Like if there's like a disaster and you got to declare martial law or whatever, the country's under attack, that kind of thing, right? And yeah, like using the internment camps as an example, it's not always the best, like, the basically the policies you can enact with this are not always just, right? But that is, I mean, that is an example of when it's not just, I guess is what you could say. So anyway, long story short, that means that they took this ruling seriously. And the idea was that this is a constitutional right. And then if you're going to pass a law regulating this, which could infringe upon your right to abortion, then you're infringing upon your constitutional right. So if that law better have a good reason behind it. That's essentially what it means. It wasn't just like, so this wasn't just some throwaway fly by night like ruling that was misinterpreted into something it shouldn't have been. It's like from the very beginning they intended Roe versus Wade to like to be a constant, like a major, like addition to the Constitution, right? They intended it to be something that you could set precedent on. Right. So anyway, um what time is it? 10:14. Let's read a little bit more and then I'll do I'm going to get through this next case here and then I'll read some comments. The next case that applies to this is another one called Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992. And this was basically when Roe versus Wade was challenged before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld it. So 1992 is roughly 20 years later, 19 years later, something like that. And this basically solidified the right to an abortion, right? Um, but what it did is that it struck down what the three trimester framework. So in Roe versus Wade, basically they said, okay, you can have laws regulating abortion, and it has to follow this particular framework. And during the first trimester, no restrictions. During the second trimester, you have to have a compelling medical reason. And then during the third trimester, it's like basically, you can outlaw it, right? And what this one changed, Casey versus Planned Parenthood, it got rid of that framework and made it dependent upon the viability of the fetus. So if the fetus is able to survive outside of the mother, then the state can regulate abortion. Basically, the state can outlaw it if the fetus is able to survive outside of its mother. And that's why you saw for a long time lots of court cases after that, where they would talk about when does life begin, right? And then, does it begin at conception or does it begin You know, after 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks? Is it when you can detect a heartbeat? Is it when, yeah, you can see brain activity, right? So that's where it sort of shifted the wheels on the debate there, and you started seeing what are called heartbeat laws appearing all over in different states, and basically saying that, okay, after X number of weeks, like I think it's like 6 to 8 weeks, that's when you can hear a heartbeat, and so that's when it's outlawed. The problem is with a lot of those laws is that it's too early. 6 weeks is too early. Sometimes a woman doesn't even know she's pregnant after 6 weeks. That's what the Texas, sue everybody and their mother anti-abortion law is all about. They cap that at 6 weeks. If you get one after 6 weeks, then people can sue you for 10 grand or whatever. But it's like at that point, you don't even know that you're pregnant, right? Because it happens all the time, so you don't, some women don't have regular periods, sometimes even when you're not pregnant, your period can be wonky. And then you realize, hey, I haven't had a period for 2 months, and then you get a pregnancy test, and lo and behold, right? But the 6 week window was already passed, and they did it like that on purpose, obviously, because, Christians are fucking assholes. That's what it is. Anyway, this case too, 1992, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. It also got rid of the strict scrutiny aspect and instead went with the undue burden standard. So that's a lower standard, right? That basically says a law that would outlaw abortion would be unconstitutional if it puts undue burden on restrictions that would cause an undue burden on actually getting an abortion. So, basically not treating it as a constitutional right anymore, but basically saying that if you were to like require, so things like there were laws that required you to go through counseling and like all this other shit before you got an abortion, those all got struck down. There are other laws out there that require abortion providers, clinics, things like that to have like ridiculous like amounts of like regulation in them. Like, they can't be X number of feet away from a school. They have to have a hallway door that's this number of feet long. You have to have a neurosurgeon on staff at all times. All of this shit. Those are laws that get struck down under the undue burden law. Of course, this always has to go through court. It has to worm its way through the court system for any of these court cases, and they can take years and years. And it's like, none of these uh none of these restrictions like tried to, stop the right wing from actually trying to do it, but they would just lose every time, you know. Anyway, excuse me. So that's the background there. Let's read a few comments before we go on, because I do need to end this a little early. Um, not I have to end it by 11 a.m. because that's when we're going to Free Comic Book Day. But let's read a few comments here. Cat loves me. Okay, they only did that for show, knowing it wouldn't pass. When they actually could kill the ACA, they couldn't do it in the end. Yeah, you're talking about, so right, the Republicans. Yeah, they did it for show. And that's the really the rub. That's the shitty thing about it, is that it was all theater, right? They try to repeal it 60 odd times. When they actually became, in charge, when Trump took over the presidency and they had a majority in both houses and could pass whatever they wanted, they didn't do anything. And it's because they don't actually give a shit about healthcare, right? Republicans don't actually care about healthcare. They like it how it is right now, where, I mean, the thing is, you got to remember the ACA is based on Romney Care. It's the conservative solution to a universal health care plan. That's the ACA. That's what we have right now. We have what the Republicans, like what the conservatives and the Republicans wanted, right? You know, Forcing you to buy health care forcing you to give your money to a private company, that's like their wet dream, right? That's what they wanted in the first place. So yeah, you're right. It was all show. And then, once Trump becomes, president, it was like the Trump healthcare plan was just 2 weeks away, you know. And I think the crazies there may have like jumped the gun a little bit because they like, got rid of the mandate, right? So now you don't actually have to buy it, but the rest of the ACA is still there. So that kind of made it better in my opinion. Right. Then again, they took away a lot of the other protections and things. So the ACA wasn't all just about you have to buy healthcare. The ACA was also about things like, well, the healthcare you buy has to like actually work. Like you couldn't just sell shitty healthcare anymore. Like that was another thing is that you could get cheap, health insurance, right? But it wouldn't do anything. And a lot of so a lot of people saw their rates go up once Obamacare kicked into high gear in 2014. And the reason why they saw their rates go up is because the healthcare they had didn't meet the minimum standard requirements for a healthcare plan under the ACA. Um, Long story short, it was worthless. It didn't actually do anything. You were paying them for health insurance that wasn't going to help you when you actually got sick. And that was part of what the ACA said. ACA said was that no, this health care plan actually has to provide this minimum, amount of care. So then everybody freaked out and got pissed when their rates went up, and it was like because what you were paying for wasn't fucking worth anything, right? The Republicans put that right back. So now you can go buy a shitty, you can go spend thousands of dollars a year on a shitty healthcare plan that when you fucking like, actually need it, God forbid you get cancer or something, and you actually try to collect on this shit, it's not going to pay you anything, right? And you're just right back to where you started. And that's because that's what they like. They want it like that because they don't care about people. They don't care about healthcare. They never fucking cared about healthcare. It was all a fucking scam, right? They don't have, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, show me the conservative healthcare plan. Where's the healthcare plan from the GOP, right? They don't have one. They've had fucking what? It's been 10 years since the ACA has been enacted. They haven't come up with a fucking healthcare plan in 10 years. 10 years. Where is it? You know, Trump kept telling us that it was going to be like, oh, it's 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're going to have it. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. It never fucking happened because it was a lie. It's like because they never gave a shit about it in the first place. So that's just, I wish people would remember this shit. This is our job to do as, if you are politically active at all, it's our job to remind people, right, of what actually happened, to take shit like this out of the memory hole, and remember what happens when the wrong fucking people win the election, when the wrong people like, take power and everybody suffers, right? So, anyway, I don't know, that's a subject that really pisses me off. It really pisses me off because we should fucking have it by now, you know? Excuse me, hang on a second. There, just drinking my breakfast shake. We should really have universal health care in this country. You know, it's kind of like, I think, just like an embarrassment, the fact that we don't. And every other Western developed nation out there, and even some nations that aren't Western and developed, still have better healthcare systems than us. Cuba has better healthcare than us. If you were sick in Cuba, you'll pay less money and you'll get better care than you will in the United States. It's just like, it's embarrassing. It's fucking embarrassing, man, that, we can't get this done. And it's like, the reason we can't get it done is because of Republicans. Let's be honest. It's because of Republicans. They're the ones who are fucking it up for everybody. So, Dynacat, I still itemize, but Intuit TurboTax charges me $100 to do it. Yeah, used to, but there were certain things that you didn't have, like you could still take off without itemizing, right? You could still, for example, do things like declare a home office and get that off, and you didn't have to actually itemize in order to get that tax cut, that tax break. Can't do that anymore. You know, they took all that shit away, and it's like because they fucking raised taxes on the middle class. Like that's the other thing. It's God, I don't know. I don't understand people, man. I don't understand how people can just get like screwed every year and just smile and like because they want to fucking protect the baby fetuses and shit. And they'll just like, they'll just like ignore all of the other incredibly bad policies and lies and I don't know. That's it, because that's another wedge issue that Republicans and conservatives use all the time. Taxes, taxes, taxes. And they're going to lower your taxes, blah blah blah. And then when they get in charge, the first thing they fucking do is raise taxes on the middle class. It's just like it's unbelievable. I don't know. And nobody fucking talks about it. This tax season, tax season was just last month, like, April 15th or whatever, right? Did you see anything anywhere in the news on any of the news shows, on any of the political talk shows, anybody talking about how taxes went up for the middle class? Nope. No, there were no stories about it. There were no nothing. Nobody cared. Nobody cared because, you know, taxes went up for normal people. If they would have gone up for rich people, it'd be all over the fucking news, wouldn't it? Right? But no, it went up for you and me, and they don't give a shit about normal people, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. Lewis the Hedgehog, I just heard that the Democrats are still not going to get rid of the filibuster. Yeah, they will not because of conservatives. Because they will not because Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are conservatives and they don't want to get rid of the filibuster because they're single-handedly destroying Joe Biden's presidency. Of course, you could make the argument that it's the Democratic establishment who are just using Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin as puppets in order to basically enact, you know, in order to keep these types of laws from regulating their donors. And yeah, that's a viable criticism as well, you know, because the Democratic establishment is somewhat conservative when it comes to they're very conservative when it comes to monetary policy, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to regulating corporations. There's not much difference between the Republican and Democratic establishment. The one thing that they're supposed to be mostly different about is social issues, things like abortion. And you'd think that because the Democrats also use these types of social issues to raise money as well, right? And you would think that if one of their cash cows was under threat like this, that they would jump into action. You would think that they would make the calculation that, hey, if we actually like passed this and like passed a law protecting abortion, that people will vote for us, you'd think that they would do it. And for the life of me, I don't know who's in charge over there, right? And I'm just talking about like from a purely political sense. I'm being like super cynical Machiavellian about it, right? I'm not even thinking about right and wrong. I'm thinking about as a democratic political operative, how can I manipulate this situation in order to get the most support and votes and money? And my conclusion that I come up with is we'll get a shitload of money if we actually did something that people like. And I don't know, maybe they must be thinking they'll make more money if they just use it as an issue in order to fundraise on or some shit. I don't know. I don't know. They're going to get stumped if they don't. That's the thing. If they don't do any, I mean, they're already going to lose, and they must know that they're going to lose in this next midterm. And if people think that they're worthless, then what happens is you just get political apathy kicking in, you know, right? People are just going to be like, well, they're not going to do anything anyway, so fuck it, I just won't vote. And then Republicans are going to clean up, and then before you know it, they're going to fucking like outlaw, they're going to outlaw interracial marriage. They're going to outlaw gay marriage for sure. Gay marriage is, if they continue on the way they're going, that's going away. That'll definitely go away. Interracial marriage might not be for another decade, but gay marriage is next. Just mark my words. Right? They've been gunning for gay marriage for, you know, a decade at this point, and they're not going to give up about it. And kiss all the trans rights and gay rights, kiss all those goodbye as well. You know, pretty soon it'll be like legal nationwide to just fire somebody for being gay or trans, right? It already is legal in certain states to fire someone or to deny them, um, you know, housing, for example. Like if you own an apartment and the person who wants to like, get your apartment is gay, it already is legal in certain states in this country to just use that as a reason why you don't want to it's like, oh, I'm not gonna rent to this person because I don't like his because he's gay. That and it's completely 100% legal. It's like legal in like Texas and like fucking Louisiana and a couple of other states to do that. Pretty soon that'll be legal like around the entire country. Just watch, right? Because I mean, if we keeps going the way it's going, if we don't actually like do something about it, you know, and sucks that the only people that can fucking do anything about it are the Democratic Party. That's kind of fucking ridiculous, right? I mean, we always have direct action, I guess, protesting, stuff like that. Protesting is only going to get you so far. It only, protesting doesn't change the law. It doesn't. And don't think that it will. And you can protest as hard as you want. If Republicans are in charge, all they're going to do is send cops out to fucking beat you and throw you in jail. And that's it. Your law will never get changed, right? Protesting direct action only works when there's somebody in charge who's receptive to your message. When the person in charge makes a political calculation saying, okay, we can enact this law, we can make this change, whatever, and it'll benefit us, right? That's when direct action matters. And that's just sort of like I was saying before, the left goes to sleep in this country when they have people in charge who are receptive to their message, right? Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, they are receptive to your message, right? It's not their policy because we're not forcing them to make it their policy. Okay. People are talking about like how they want you know, student loans and stuff. Joe Biden keeps dangling that like a carrot in front of him. Maybe I'll get rid of student loans, maybe I won't. If there were a million people in front of the White House right now demanding that he gets rid of student loans, guess what? He'd fucking do it, right? But if imagine now you have Donald Trump as president, there could be every single person in the country there in front of the White House demanding that, and he fucking wouldn't do it because he doesn't give a shit. What would he do? He'd send the cops out there to like kidnap people off the streets. We already saw that's his response. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember that. You remember federal officers just grabbing people off the street during the George Floyd protests? No uniforms, right? Remember that? When Trump sent people out there, to in front of federal buildings and stuff, and they would just grab people off the streets, no uniforms, right? You didn't know what agency they were from. They would just grab people, throw them in a car, and drive away, and that was it. And you didn't know where they were going, right? Excuse me for a second, guys. Sorry, I got to drink something. Yikes. Anyway, that's their fucking response to it. So no, no, that's the thing is that we're doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing. Right now, we should be out there protesting harder, you know, in order to get these things done because there's people in office now who will actually listen to us. And it's just like, I don't know. The left wing in this country is so disorganized disorganized and you know fractured that they just can't get their shit together. And it's like, anyway, moving on. Excuse me. God damn, it's because I'm, if I wasn't talking and streaming, I wouldn't, my throat wouldn't be all fucking like phlegmy right now. Okay, let's continue on a little bit because I'm gonna have to end at like 11, so I do want to read some of the other shit that I've got here. God damn it. Now my voice is all fucked up. All right. So, what exactly happened, right? This We have this leaked Supreme Court draft decision that everybody's losing their minds over. What was that all about? So this decision was for a case called Dobbs versus Jackson's Women Health Organization, right? That was brought up in 2018 when Mississippi passed the um, Gestational Age Act in 2018, which basically banned abortion after 15 weeks. Um, And this law, of course, did not have any provision for rape or incest because Republicans are assholes. Christians and conservative Christians are assholes. That's why. That's why that they want to put it into law saying that you have to have a rapist baby because they're assholes. Let's always remember that, right? And so within 24 hours of that law being passed in 2018, it was sued by the one abortion clinic that exists in Mississippi, right? Which is like, here's the thing about that. Why would you want to, like, there's already only one clinic, right? That means you won, okay? That means basically that abortion was essentially, there's no access to abortion in a state when you only have one clinic in the entire fucking state. You already won, okay? But no, they had to push it even further because they're assholes who want to impose their will on everybody, because Christians don't give a shit about freedom. So that's why they tried to outlaw it completely, right? Plus, also, they wanted this scenario, which is happening right now. This is exactly was their plan because, we had additional conservative justices on the Supreme Court. So the plan always was sort of from the beginning in order to get a case in front of the Supreme Court that they could overturn Roe versus Wade. That was sort of the plan. Ever since we got Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett in there, you know, in order to stack the court with a fucking 6-3 conservative supermajority. That was the plan to beginning. That's when you started seeing all of these laws that were blatantly unconstitutional. And here's the thing about this gestational act, Alabama's gestational act here, or sorry, it wasn't Alabama, it was Mississippi. Sorry. Um, that even one of the supporters for this law said it was unconstitutional, right? Even the governor at the time, right? His name was Governor Phil Bryant of Mississippi. I don't know if he's still the governor. He even said when he signed this in the law, this was his quote. Okay. We'll probably be sued here in about half an hour, and that'll be fine with me. It's worth fighting over. So even he knew that it's like, okay, this is the whole point behind this is to stir the pot, to get the controversy going in order to get a case before the Supreme Court so that our fucking conservative Christian cohorts on the court can overturn Roe versus Wade. That was the plan from the very beginning, right? Anyway, so when the court finally does make this ruling to turn Roe versus Wade over, which they will, because this draft now that's out essentially solidifies that, then this basically means that, immediately 23 states have what are called sort of trigger laws in place that will immediately come into effect, and abortion will be banned in essentially half the country. Right. I have this image here. Let me just make this a little bigger. Here's a map of what the United States will look like. Right, let's make this a little bit bigger here. I think I could just drag and drop. Yeah. This is basically the states where these red states banned completely. 100% banned. No abortions at all. Right. Pink ones are restricted. You can get abortions up to a certain date. You know, there's exactly one state here, I think this is New Mexico, where it's just not protected. So there's no law that says, oh, there's another one over here, whatever that is. Like, is that's not Maine, but the one right below Maine, whatever state that is. Um, so there's just no law that says that it's, protected, that says that, okay, basically it's there, those are states where it's open season and they'll pass a law to ban it. And then of course the blue states where it is actually protected by law. So that's kind of like, it's actually more than half the country. If you take the restricted ones in with the banned portion, right? I always like looking at maps like this because it sort of shows what parts of the country are actually free and what parts are slowly descending into a right-wing dystopian hellhole. And I can't help but notice, I've made this observation in streams before, that it's essentially the old Confederacy. This is what it is. This huge solid block of red right here is the old Confederacy, right? The same states that tried to secede from the Union and declare war in order to protect their state right to own another human being as a slave are the same states that are saying that you cannot, you know, choose what you can and can't do with your own body. That you don't have a right to choose when you don't want to have children, right? They're also the same states where marijuana is banned, right? These are also the same states where gay rights and trans rights, where all of those anti like trans like bathroom bills are going through. All of these laws against like trans kids competing in sports. These are all being passed in the same fucking states, right? This is America, two Americas, folks, you know, one America where you're actually free. You're allowed to do what you want with your body. You're allowed to love who you want. You're allowed to express yourself in any way you want, including the way you express your gender, right? You're allowed to choose when you can have families, when you can have children, when you don't want to have a child. You're allowed to do these things at another part of the country where they will throw you in jail for making those same choices. This is just I don't know, man. Very, very strange country that we live in, right? So there are, of course, these other, bills all over the country now that are immediately going to, you know, trigger and outlaw abortion. We have the one in Texas, of course, you know, this sue people because Christians are assholes bill. The one that basically says that you can be sued if you like sell a woman a taco outside of a fucking like, you know, abortion clinic and then she gets an abortion, right? You can be sued if you like drive her there in a taxi or an Uber or something, right? Alabama also passed a law like that. Basically modeled on the exact same thing. It's essentially the exact same thing as Texas's law. Alabama also passed a 100% just outlaw abortion bill completely outlawed it. So now, as soon as this draft becomes opinion, it's gone in Alabama 100%. Oklahoma just signed a heartbeat bill into law, which allows civil enforcement, which is basically the same thing as Texas's law, you know, no abortions after 6 weeks, no exceptions for rape and incest, right? And people who live, people can sue even if they don't live in Oklahoma, the exact same thing as Texas. That's what really gets me about those ridiculous fucking laws. It's like you don't even have to live in the state where the woman lives who got the abortion in order to sue and collect money. You can live outside of the state. If that's not unconstitutional, then what is? You know. And our Supreme Court with our super, 6-3 super majority Supreme Court has just decided not to take these laws up. They decided to let the Texas law stand and work its way through the court system. So that just kind of goes to show you what the integrity that the court has now. You know, there's this thing that people were trying to say that the Supreme Court is not politicized, that the Supreme Court is supposed to be above the fray, and they're supposed to actually rule from like what the law actually says and blah blah blah, and not take these sorts of left wing right wing politics into account. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's always been bullshit. The Supreme Court has always been politicized, and anyone who doesn't think so is a fucking idiot. Sorry. And this is what happens when you allow, when you get people in charge who don't care about the actual fucking law, right? Who don't care about precedent. I mean, I don't know. Ridiculous, right? Louisiana has advanced a bill in their state Senate which not only outlaws abortion, but also says that anyone who gets an abortion will be guilty of murder. Wait, why is that? Am I on the wrong layer here? What the fuck is going on? Why is that not working? Hang on a second. Okay, I can erase that. And then when I want to draw, that's kind of strange. Why is that not doing that? Give me a second, folks. Let's just merge this down. Merge with layer below. Then I got to make another layer here. And then I got to move that like that. And then I have to get my paint bucket. There we go. Okay, now I should be able to draw there. I don't know why I did that. That was kind of odd. Why did it? What the fuck? Why is it still not doing it? Oh, it's because I have the wrong color. Okay, cancel that. Okay. So sorry guys, got a little distracted there with technical difficulties. Wait a sec. All right, why is this not? What the fuck, dude? Something just happened. I just screwed something up here. Opacity 100. Is that gonna do it now? No. Something is very wrong here. Blender base. Let's just go back to basic. Did I just choose the wrong thing? You could see this, right? Why is nothing like working here? Why is it not? Did my color opacity, everything should be working, right? Why is my pen? The pen's not working anymore. Am I like I'm not erasing now? Okay, it's letting me erase stuff, right? See, I can erase, but then when I want to not erase, then what did I just do something here? I think I screwed something up somehow. What did I color name? No. Okay. I don't understand this. I don't understand why it's not like it's not putting the color there. Well, fuck. Anyway, that's kind of fucked up. I'm gonna have to figure out why this shit isn't working anymore. I guess I can erase stuff. Anyway, Well, we're getting a little bit close to the end here, anyhow. I do have to get going because, like I said, it's free comic book day, and I need to go get me comic books. But I did want to kind of end with one thing here. This is what happens, right? I wanted to end with one thing, okay? I wanted to end by with who actually gets abortions in this country, right? And it should be a surprise to nobody to know that the people who get abortions in the country are the people who claim that they're against abortion. The majority of abortions in this country are from Christians, right? As of 2014, this was the newest stats I could find on this. Abortion by religious affiliation. 13% of the women who get abortions in this country are evangelical Protestants, right? You know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna save that. I just need to like reset everything. How can I just fucking reset the whole thing? There's gotta be like uh something. Or maybe I'm like, is there something I'm like doing wrong here? Print layer, brush presets, like can I paint on that layer? No. Damn. Maybe I need to choose a different brush? I don't know. Anyway, 13% of people who get abortions are evangelical Protestants, right? 17% are mainline Protestants. 24% of them are Catholic, right? 8% other. 38% are no religious affiliation, right? That doesn't really mean atheist. When you just say no religious affiliation, that just means you don't belong to a church, right? So you could be, you know, still religious and just not belong to a church, right? And if I remember right, the last time I found it, I couldn't find it here. I actually looked, but the actual people who were, you know, okay, this one works. What the fuck? How come the other one didn't work? Anyway, um, it was something like the last time I was able to find actual stats on this, it was around 24% of those claim to be like atheist, right? So if you look, that kind of adds up, 13 plus 17 plus 24. That's 54% of the people who get abortions are Christians because that's what they are. You know, Catholics and evangelicals and mainline Protestants are Christians. These are the people who are against abortion, who say that they're against abortion. Well, they're the ones who are getting the majority of fucking abortions. So you would think that what they would do is they would just stop fucking getting them, right? If you are against abortion, then why are you not just telling your people to just not get abortions, right? What is the problem? How come they need to force everybody to do exactly what they say, right? And it's because they don't care. Once again, they're Christians. They're Christians and they don't give a shit about freedom, right? They want to force everybody to live the way they want to live. And this is when you get, because here's the thing, there's like plenty of people out there who are Christians who actually support abortions, right? Who actually do support people having rights, you know, who would never do something like outlaw, say, not just abortion, but something like gay marriage or whatever, right? There's plenty of people out there who are Christians who would, are actually do have sensible, stances on things like that relates to these rights. They're not the people who are in charge, right? And it's the people who are in charge are essentially Christian fascists, right? And I'm not just saying that word fascist to be flippant about it or to cause controversy. That's really what they are, Christian fascists, right? I mean, I did a whole stream on, on this a few weeks ago. Christian fascists. Essentially, it's basically on the exact same subject almost. We talked about abortion and we talked about trans rights, and that's what they are, folks. If you don't think that Christians can be fascists, this is what fascism is. When you are removing the rights from a certain segment of the population based on, essentially dogma, whether that dogma is religious or what. That's a big a big sign of fascism there. That's one of the tenets of fascism is othering a group, right? And imposing your will upon them, you know. So it's kind of yeah, like it's a scary time. It basically means that all of the progress that we've made as a country over the last, 100 years now, all of that is on the table. Everything, right? And don't think for a minute that, they won't take it away, that they won't take away civil rights, that they won't take away, any of the small amounts of victories we've had when it comes to the drug war. Things like, because, like, for example, marijuana legalization, right? There's no federal law that says that it's legal, and it's just been the people in charge are not enforcing that. The federal law actually says that marijuana is illegal right now, and it's just that it's not being challenged. It's not being, you know, the federal government is not challenging these state laws that allow for recreational use. That'll go away, right? And don't think that gay marriage is safe. Gay marriage is not safe. Don't think that access to contraceptives are safe. That's on the table too. You know, um, interracial marriage is on the table. That'll go away too. Civil rights, that's on the table, right? They'll take that away also. They'll take away all of this shit. They'll turn it back to how it was in 1941 in this country because that's what they want. Let's also not forget that the evangelical Christians, the same people who are railing against abortion, they were the same people who were in support of segregation, right? They're the people who fought and, murdered people over segregation. Let's not forget that either, right? That might be a pretty good idea for a stream too, the history of segregation and people like Jerry Falwell, for example. I don't know if you can remember him, Jerry Falwell fought to keep segregation in place. You know, same people, folks. Many of the same people back then are still alive and are still out there organizing this stuff. And they've just shifted their attention away from minorities and black people and towards gay and trans people now. So, anyway, let's read a few more comments and then I got to get going. And then I got to figure out why my fucking thing here won't actually like draw anymore. I have some setting. I just need to like set it back to like the default setting or whatever. I must have clicked something with it and not realized it. Let's see. Tiny Cat loves me. Of course they won't kill the filibuster. They think they need it. They will need it next year, and of course the Republicans will never kill it. Tiny Cat. Well, you could get them to extend the Second Amendment to minors. Oh, yeah. Um, Well, I do have to disagree with you there. I do think that the Republicans will kill the filibuster the minute it becomes politically expedient for them to do so. You know, kind of the same way they killed it when it came to Supreme Court justices. The filibuster applied there too, and then they wanted to get three Supreme Court justices during Trump's term, and so what do? They killed the filibuster. And I really think that, the nanosecond they get in charge with all three branches of government, and if the Democrats think they can rely on the filibuster to stop things, then they're mistaken. The filibuster will go away because Republicans don't give a fuck. And you know what'll happen? They'll put it back after once they lose the election. They'll put the filibuster back. That's what they'll try to do. right? Because, it's funny. There's a guy that comes on here on my channel once in a while. His name's 1911 Greater Than All. And he made a comment the other day, which kind of stuck with me. And one of his comments was, um, your political opponent is your enemy. And we kind of got into a little conversation where I was like, well, on the left wing, we don't see right wingers as enemies, because they don't. They're not seen like, especially when it comes to the establishment, the Democratic Party does not see the Republican Party as the enemy, right? And, even I don't know about the rank and file or even individual voters. Like, I know that, for example, the alt-right sort of like, Richard Spencer, Nick Fuentes types. Those are basically seen as the enemy by some people on the left. They would consider those people enemies, right? But for the most part, even from like your average, progressive liberal or progressive voter, they don't really see conservatives as an enemy to be defeated, Not really. It's more like people tend to see conservatives as an obstacle to be overcome. And the reason for that is because usually once a policy or a law gets passed from the left wing side, the conservative voter, at least, conservative voters tend to support that policy. And abortion is one of those policies, right? Actual conservative voters, like, support abortion 70% to 30%. They do, right? And that's the one of the reasons why they're flipping out so much is because of that. Because they think that they might have it's sort of like the dog who chases cars. You're like, what do you do when you finally catch one? Like, a lot of their support and a lot of right-wing voters also are like two issue voters as well. They care about two things. Like, they care about the Second Amendment and they care about abortion. Well, they just got one of the things they care about, right? So it's sort of like a big part of the population isn't going to vote now because it's like, well, the thing I wanted is already lost, so I don't give a shit. That's all they cared about you know, was abortion. So that's another thing that kind of has the GOP a little freaked over this. It's like, well, fuck, now we can't raise money over this. So anyway, um, let's see. Dynacat, thank you for jumping in, man. Appreciate that. Lewis a Hedgehog, you once said the Jews have the least abortions, and yet they're fine with it. They believe that the first 45 days of the womb is filled with only water, and they're mostly right. And then afterwards, the contents are considered by them to just be a limb of the mother until birth. That's true. That's true. They of the religious, like, if taken by religious demographics in the country, Jewish people have the fewest number of abortions. It's something like 2%, you know. And you could say, like, well, there's reasons for that. I mean, is it a cultural reason? Is it because Jewish women tend to be more educated? I think there's a lot of these factors come into play as well. That's another thing, right? The more educated a woman is, the less likely she is to have an abortion, right? When she's young, at least. Like, the majority of abortions are actually from women who are between 24 to 28, right around that stage where they're not exactly married yet and they don't want to have children to like screw up their career, that kind of thing, you know? And then a large number of them also are mainly women who are already married as well. Like, that's the next largest like segment, women who are already married and can't afford to have another kid, right? So the thing is like, well, educated women tend to have less children in general, right? And the children that they do have are ones that they like deliberately planned on having. So that's another way that you could reduce abortions is by, promoting education, especially for women, you know. And they don't want to do that because Republicans are assholes. Oh, sorry. Okay. Anyway, I am getting the signal to end this, so I'm going to end it here. But I did want to end on this last little segment. Before we go, I want to show you guys one thing, right? Elections have consequences. So I want to show you this video.
Let's pick up on a.
Nope, shut up. Here's a video here that I want to show for you guys. This is the 2016 final presidential debate. Let's just make this a little smaller so that YouTube doesn't kill my stream, right? And this is, of course, let's just get rid of the CBS logo there. Haha, screw you, YouTube. Right. This is, of course, the 2016 final presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And if you're looking for somebody like, how did this happen? Let's just take this debate here and let's listen to our former President Trump actually talk, right?
Let's pick up on another issue which divides you and the justices that whoever ends up winning this election appoints could have a dramatic effect there, and that's the issue of abortion.
Right.
Mr. Trump, you're pro-life, but I want to ask you specifically, do you want the court, including the justices that you will name, to overturn Roe v. Wade, which includes, in fact, states a woman's right to abortion?
Well, if that would happen, because I am pro-life and I will be appointing pro-life judges, I would think that that will go back to the individual states.
But I'm asking you specifically.
So, this is what he wanted, right? Basically, Donald Trump went, and look at the look on Hillary's face here. That shit's hilarious. She's just looking like, what? Anyway, Trump basically said it. He said this is what he was going to do. I'm going to appoint conservative judges, and we're going to overturn it. You notice the way he answers, he doesn't give a straight answer about it. He doesn't actually say, I'm going to do this. He says, this is what will happen, right? Because even Donald Trump at this time knew that this was toxic. He knew that people didn't like this, and was only doing it to appeal to a certain voter base to come out for him, right? So he's trying to dodge the question, but also answer in the affirmative at the same time. And Donald Trump is a really bad at bullshitting people. It's like you can just tell when he's fucking lying. So, but I wanted to emphasize this because here's the thing is that he said he was going to do it, right? So, this is what was going on.
Specifically, would you
If
like
they
to?
overturned it, it'll go back to the states.
But what I'm asking you, sir, is do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe
Well,
v.
if
Wade?
we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that's will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court. I will say this, it will go back to the states, and the states will then make a determination.
So, that's exactly what he wanted, right? What's happening is this was the plan from the beginning. Let's turn this shit off, right? Let me get rid of that. How do I, yeah, okay. That was his plan. So remember, when Donald Trump runs for president again in 2 years, if you care about abortion, that's what, he's the one that made this happen, right? Elections have consequences. Start thinking now about how all the other shit in this country is. Oh, is that still displaying? Let's get rid of that. You got to start thinking now about, it's not just about what you can get if you win. We have to start thinking defensively. You got to start thinking about what you can potentially lose if these people are allowed to be in charge again. Right? Elections have consequences. Okay. If Hillary Clinton would have won that election like the majority of people in this country wanted, because she won the popular vote. If the will of the majority of the people in this country was actually carried out and she became president, we wouldn't have this problem now. Roe versus Wade would be intact, right? We wouldn't have a 6-3 super conservative majority on the Supreme Court, and we wouldn't be in danger of backsliding to the 1940s socially in this country. And that's just the God honest truth. And I know everybody hates Hillary Clinton, and I know all these people didn't like her, and you had Bernie Bros and all this other shit, and everybody was like, "Oh, what's the worst that could happen?" Blah 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 blah. This is what happened. This is the worst that could happen. All right. This is these are consequences from elections. Elections matter. And it doesn't matter how much you fucking protest. It doesn't matter what direct actions you do. It doesn't matter how much money you give to people or how much time or, you volunteer. If you don't have someone in charge who's going to pass that law, then it's not going to happen. This is the way the country works, folks. So get out there, get angry, get motivated, and for fucking God's sakes, vote. And that's all I got. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it now because I got to get going. But before I do, I need to do my usual ending speech kind of stuff here. So let me just go to my various social medias and thank all you guys for coming in early today. I know, I kind of did this with like not a lot of notice. So I still appreciate you guys coming. I still appreciate you, Dynacat, for coming, Lewis the Hedgehog, and there were a couple of other people that I saw, and I really appreciate it. I will try to keep this stuff on a consistent schedule. It's just today was sort of like a special day because, I got to go get free comic books. And usually there's like a huge ass line and all that stuff in front of everything. So, if you like what I do, let me just move all this stuff over here. And let's turn on my laptop window again. So if you like what I do and you want to support me, you can buy something from my Etsy shop. Really appreciate that. There you go. Jeannie B, yay, thanks for joining. Sorry, I'm ending now, but thanks for coming in. I don't know how long you were watching. Anyway, if you like what I do and you want to help me and you want to give me some money, you could buy something from my Etsy shop. I have prints, blah, 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 blah. You've seen them. If you like my artwork and you want to see more of it, you can check it out on my DeviantArt site. It's all here, comics and stuff like that, etc., etc., etc. Everything goes up there. Whoa, that was not the right one. It should be this. If you want to see my webcomic, it's up at hawanja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas and people getting punched in the face and monsters and stuff like that, talking ducks, that kind of thing. And if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and other stuff, check me out on UCD videos there. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog, Jeannie B. Oh, okay. Well, you were here the whole time. Cool. Well, great to hear from you again. Hey, Dorothea, I moved. I live in the valley now, so maybe we should hang out or something. I live in well, I'm not going to tell you where I live, not over the live stream, but I live closer, I guess, is where I live. Anyway, um, talk to you guys later. Edward Jaworski, thank you for joining too, but I'm leaving, dude. Sorry. Bye bye, everybody, and everybody have a great day. I will see you all later. Adios.